So I sold my 4 single family rentals. We cashed out my wife and mine 401ks. And then once I saw that, oh, this works, now I was able to go all in.
All right. Welcome to the 0 to 100 podcast show. I'm here with my co-host, Mitchell England. Travis Dillard is gone today. He is visiting the beautiful state of Oklahoma. Many of you listeners, you've heard of all of Travis's Oklahoma City stories. So we'll leave it at that. And we have a great guest today, Jon Farling, good friend of mine. Got to know Jon really well over his last year and a half. Jon Farling was able to escape the rat race, something we call R1, to achieve financial freedom. Jon did that in 2020 after acquiring 3 self-storage facilities in Ohio. Since then, he's been able to acquire a total of 14 self-storage facilities while spending as much time as he wants with his wife and 2 kids. I love that that's in your bio. That's a big part of 0 to 100, time freedom through cash flow real estate. Jon is also the host of the Do More podcast, a podcast helping spread education related to entrepreneurship, the type of education that is not taught in schools. Love that. So, Jon, welcome to the 0 to 100 podcast show.
Man, I appreciate you guys having me on. This should be fun.
Absolutely. Let's get into your backstory. I mean, you have not been investing very long, or at least it didn't take long for you to replace your income and reach financial freedom. You started buying self-storage facilities in 2020.
Yeah. So there's a lot more to that. I got started with single family rentals in 2014. And, the typical did everything myself, bought 1 per year, did a flip in there. So there's a lot more, kind of behind the scenes before I was able to reach financial freedom.
You didn't just go out and buy 3 self-storage facilities one day in 2020 and we're like, oh, I'm done.
Nope. I kind of sometimes forget about, what's that, 6 years, probably 7 years, because I started looking in 2013. Kind of forget about it, but that's really where the foundation was laid, so that I could parlay into commercial properties and become financially free.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So even before 2013, 14, when you bought, your first single family, what were you doing leading up to that? And then how did real estate get on the radar?
Yeah, I had after college, had a couple sales jobs, coached basketball on the side. Thought I wanted to become a full-time college basketball coach. As soon as I found my soon-to-be wife, I realized that's not the lifestyle I wanted to live. So dove deep into sales career, worked for a couple sales companies, but the one I was at for about a decade was a small electrical contractor, and learned a lot there. It's family owned, not my family, but another family. Family owned, learned a lot what to do and learn a lot what not to do as well. But that really gave me the flexibility and freedom to, I guess, kind of tap into my entrepreneurial spirit that I didn't know I had. But with outside sales, I had some free time. I had some time on the road and just listened to podcasts, and always wanted to do kind of more. A 9 to 5 just wasn't enough for me. I always wanted to do more, whether I was coaching on the side. Kind of fast forward a little bit, 2014, our first kid's born. And I start running financial numbers. Will we ever be able to retire? Things like that, pay for kids' college education. And the numbers just weren't mathing.
Doesn't look great, does it?
Yeah, didn't look great.
It can be stressful those first years, how kids, you're going, oh man, I gotta change something.
Yep. So that was really the, my parents were in real estate before. They built spec homes. They had a couple of rentals. So I've always been around real estate, so I just kind of gravitated towards that. And I think it was end of 14, picked up my first single family rental and did everything on that thing, and took me, I think, 5 months to finish. Longest 5 months of my life. But it was the building block of the cornerstone of where I'm at today.
Jon, did having kids light a fire under your ass? And I'm asking this because I had this big goal to be financially free. And then, hey, all of a sudden we're having our first kid. And it was like this, oh shit, I actually need to perform. I actually need to go make this dream of mine a reality. And I remember I had this young guy years later. He was like, man, it seemed like your business really started blowing up once you had kids. You think I should start having kids? And I'm like, well, don't.
You're like, not for that reason.
I said, yes, but don't go have kids that, just to fuel your, business. But I'm just curious, was that similar to you? Like you had kids and you're kind of like, wait a minute, not just like the numbers don't make sense, but was it also this fire of like, I need to go make this shit happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's easier to look back, right? In the moment, I was just trying to make more money. My sales job was somewhat endless, but not really. It's a service company, so they got to hire if I get more sales. That didn't really happen. So I was definitely capped. But yeah, looking back, it was probably just itching to want to do more with my life, make more money, just do more in general, be more relevant. And, they say you're the average of the 5 people you're around. I started consuming podcasts on podcasts and just ended up in a bunch of real estate investing podcasts, including Bigger Pockets. And I think that really set the fire and me realizing, hey, there is more out there. I don't need to have a 9 to 5, or at minimum, I think at the time, even I was just thinking towards retirement, right? To me, when I have 4 single family rentals, I thought I was set. I knew I was going to have to work till 65, 70, but I'm like, I'm going to have a good retirement because I've got 4 single family rentals. So I felt good about it. Definitely not satisfied, but I think kids definitely spurred that. And then just listen to podcasts, read books.
Talk about that first deal. How did you find it? What it looked like? How'd you finance it? Where was your head at when you bought it? Maybe walk us through that.
Started looking 2013 and was looking on the MLS, and looking back now, that was 2013. If I would have looked at the same properties in 2015 or 16, I should have bought all of them. And there were probably 20 to 40 of them.
Never heard another investor say that. I should have bought ever.
Well, yeah, which, 10 years later, it makes sense. But even 2 years later, it made sense. And I was kicking myself then, like, there's 20 houses I could have picked up, and they probably doubled in value in that time frame. But yeah, it was MLS. I had a realtor that was finding me, kind of finding me deals. It was supposed to cash flow $300 a month, which I had it for 5 years. If I had 2 more years, all that cash flow would have been wiped out. So I probably made around $300 a month, but if I would have held on to it 2 more years, I'd have replaced the AC, the roof, the windows, you name it, and all that cash flow had been out the door. But yeah, realtor found it. I did everything to it. I gutted it, flooring, cabinets, you name it. I did it and learned a lot and filled it out and at least well, and on I went.
I think that's a good point that you made about the $300 a month of cash flow. I mean, my very first rental, very similar. I think it's like, well, I lived in it, rented out 2 of the rooms, lived for less. And then when I moved out of that, turned it into a rental property, and it was, just under $300 a month. But it's a good point, which is why it's so hard to scale in single family, is your one CapEx, one capital expenditure away from all that cash flow being wiped out, whether it's a roof, it's AC, it's, even, tenants destroying the property, which can happen, right? Which makes it hard to scale. So at some point, I'm assuming after a few of these properties, you realize to scale, you need to go into a different asset class. And we'll get to that part of the story, because I know right now you're really focused on self-storage. But after that first property, then what?
I got a question for you guys. I've been thinking about this, not to derail this, but a lot of people nowadays, right? The market's shifted, right? All these people want to become financially free in real estate. You look back 20 years ago, I didn't think that was really the case. People were just picking up rental houses here and there. And obviously, Gabe, you've been in it for a while. But I think the past 10 to 15 years have really spoiled us, because we've just had this huge uptick. But it's right, especially in storage, it's hard to find a storage deal that's going to cash flow really well. Now, they are great investments, right? Real estate is a great investment. And if you hang on to it for a cycle, 10 years, 20 years, whatever, you should make money on the back end. But I think there's a lot of people nowadays that are like, you know what, I'm going to become financially free, quit my job in a year or two through rental real estate. And I think it's just gotten harder. I don't know. What do you guys say?
I do. I can jump in. I think that's true. You think about like Bigger Pockets started it, right? And now there's so many different places you can go now. There's so much education. There's so many people talking about it. I think that like the possibility is still there. I truly believe that. I think there's deals to be had, because I think we always talk about deals aren't found, they're made, right? And so today it's different than 2012. You could throw a rock and hit a good deal. Even in the mobile home park space that we're in, you could find a great deal, say 4 or 5 years ago, 9 or 10 cap pretty easily. Today, I think you got to make that deal. You got to make it work. You've got to, it's more about the terms. It's about the down payment, the interest rate, the seller financing, however you put that together. So yes, I think it's very competitive. I also think that's a benefit to people that really know what they're doing, because it's become a very like high demand, highly liquid, fast appreciating market. For example, if you can find an awesome deal in a 5 cap area, you just made a massive amount of money, right? We found a property that was like a true 8 cap on operations in a 5 cap area. Day one, we had a 10 of equity. So I think there's a couple ways to look at it, but yes, like long story short, there's more players and I think there's more demand.
Yeah, I would say similar. I do think there's always opportunity, like not just in real estate, but in life. And I think you have to play the game, right? And I think even when I had started investing in real estate, people said, oh, it's hard to find a good deal. It's hard to get a good price. Multiple offered. When I started buying property with seller financing, like I had all these people, all the people in the real estate world were like, nobody seller finances anymore. Like that's not a thing that people do anymore. And then everything I bought 2009 through 13 was all seller financing. And so I think, yes, the real estate market changes, but you got to be in the game. And I think that the difference between being actively patient and sitting on the sidelines. A lot of people that say, hey, I'm going to wait till prices adjust. I'm going to wait till interest rates adjust. They're not in it, and they're not going to be ready to buy the opportunities or create those opportunities when they come. So I think it's important to be in the game, be paying attention so that when things like prices adjust and interest rates change, you're actually ready to pull the trigger and make things happen. There's no doubt in my mind that real estate over a long period of time is a great way to build wealth. I do not think real estate is a get rich quick. I think that a lot of people have looked really smart for the last, 10 years, but those that buy and hold cash flow real estate, and the cash flow being the key that helps them hold that real estate, there's no doubt in my mind 20 years from now, people are going to be looking back, just like you said, hey, I should have bought 20, 30, 40 of these, because that $1 million property, I have no doubt in our lifetime is going to be worth $2 million, $3 million, and historically probably $4 or $5 million, right? It's how you finance the property, how you take it down, and can you hold this thing and let it cash flow for as long as you hold it?
I mean, at the very simplest, what other asset can you buy? It basically pays for itself in a very passive way, not always 100% passive. We understand that, but basically passively pays for itself plus some, and pays off all the debt that you've taken on it. And so you pay for something $1 million, even if it had no appreciation, which isn't the case. Over 20 years, it's paid off. You have $1 million asset. You're in a way different place than if you didn't do that. And a lot of people don't do that, and they end up with a small retirement or Social Security or whatever. And I think, Robert Kiyosaki always talks about it like they retire poor. And he's like, what kind of retirement is that? You're 6 years old and you have a tiny little pension that doesn't get you that far, versus the people that invest, even if they just hold on to it and it's barely any appreciation, which doesn't happen, it's an amazing asset. So I think, Gabe, you said it right, where it's like, it's not a get rich quick, but you could build impactful wealth over time.
Well, and Gabe, you made a good point that it's got a cash flow. I think a lot of people have forgotten that. And that's like investing 101, right? In real estate investing 101, it has the cash flow. I actually had a guy ask me yesterday, he's looking at a storage deal and it's about 10,000 square feet, which is, it's a small storage deal, but it's still a commercial asset. He asked me if $300 a month cash flow was enough. And I was like, no, that's not cash flowing, because your insurance is going to eat that up year one. Your insurance is going to increase more likely 20% every year. Real estate taxes, like there's so many things that will eat that up right off the bat. So yeah, cash flow is number one. You got to look for that for sure.
Yeah. So let's get back to your story.
Yeah, you derailed everything. I apologize.
You're the guest and we can take this whichever way you want to go.
I love it, man. Let's go.
Our audience, they hear a lot of what Mitch and I think. So let's get more into your story.
So the next 3 deals were basically the same, only each deal I did a little bit I don't want to say a little bit less. Deal number 2, I did a lot less. I maybe spent a few hours in rehab. I did not rehab the whole thing myself. I started getting a little bit smarter and hiring things out. But yeah, fast forward, 4 total single family rentals. I did a flip in there. and did hire the rehab out. I still did leasing because, again, 4 single family rentals, that's not scaling. It's not enough to hire anybody. So during that time, I'm looking into anything and everything, small businesses, Subway franchises, you name it. I've looked at it. I started getting the itch. I'm like, oh, I see where this is going. I can't leave my 9 to 5 now. This is what I want to do. I ended up looking at apartments, everything. Things just didn't pencil. And looking back, yeah, they all penciled now. But you can't really predict the future. So ended up looking at a car wash down the street from me, and I don't remember why we didn't close, but basically the 11th hour deal fell apart. I don't want to say I was crushed, but I was like, that sucks because this really would have, projected me where I wanted to go. And I did learn about some financing tools and learned that you could do SBA financing with a car wash, and SBA financing allows you to bring less money down. So you're putting less money into a bigger deal, commercial asset. I learned that you could do that with self-storage too. So I started reading into it, started learning about self-storage, and I'd say probably, 6 months later, within that time frame, I sent out about 60 mailers and got 2 deals from that. And in 2019, I got, 2 deals, 2020, 3 deals, and was able to quit my job in 2020.
So, Jon, I'm curious to what your job was, but then also, was it the combination of realizing that going through the process with the car wash, was it the realization that SBA was an option, and then you looked at storage, but you were also listening to the podcast and reading the book, and the combination of like, wow, storage is a business and real estate, and there's financing available for it? What was that realization of like why storage clicked? Was it the combination of those couple things?
Yeah, actually, I'm trying to remember back, but I remember having a conversation with, his name's Mike Wagner, and he's the guy that basically taught me operations of self-storage. I run my facilities with no one on site, so I couldn't wrap my head around that. So he helped me out a bunch leading up to that. But I remember a conversation we had, and again, I had 4 single family rentals, and I told him, I was like, listen, these single family rentals, if I knew I was going to quit my job, I just didn't know how. And I told him, I really want to get into something that allows me to jump in when I want and jump out when I want. And I told him, single family rentals are too passive. I only had 4, so that is passive because all I'm doing is basically filling units once a year, which is pretty easy. He kind of laughed about that and said, yeah, self-storage is a business and real estate. So I think just that conversation right there was like, oh yeah, this is something that I can kind of get my entrepreneurial kicks off and, dive into the business operations while it also acts as real estate. So kind of just looking back, it just married the 2 pieces that I really enjoyed.
Yeah. What was your job that you left?
Outside sales for a family electrical contractor.
So, Jon, will you talk about, because you said something interesting, you don't have anybody on site. And I noticed in your bio, you talk about operations. I think that operations make or break. I think you even said that, make or break a property. And I think it's so true. Not only like the tools and software and process behind it, but also the people behind it. Like we've seen it over and over again where a bad asset can be turned good or a good asset can be turned bad depending on operations. So maybe talk about how you operate these remotely, what that looks like, maybe software. Like I'm curious to hear your take on that.
Yeah, well, and COVID changed a lot of things in the world, but definitely changed self-storage. In 18, 19, I kind of thought I missed the boat. And then I pivoted and went to these smaller markets. So I'm in markets with 10 to 50,000 people and was able to pick up some deals. But we run them with no one on site through software. And with COVID has come, I guess, better software, better systems so that you can run these remotely. We don't have anybody on site, but the gate is synced to our software. So if someone rents a unit, they can do so over the phone and get a key code within 5 minutes, or they can go on their phone and rent a unit online and get a keypad code within 5 minutes and get right into their unit. COVID definitely propelled a lot of that. But I mean, that's the gist of our business right there. It's we do have cameras at our sites, but it's a gate fence, and then it's the gate is integrated with our software, which allows us to run everything remotely. And then we've got a call center, third-party call center that handles anybody that calls in. So it's not passive. Nothing's passive really, but it's very hands off if you have the right systems in place.
And it seems fairly passive to you as the owner because you have the systems in place. How many of those self-storage facilities already had those systems, nobody on site, the gates, the online rentals in place prior to you buying them?
None of them. It's a relatively new, I guess, way to run a self-storage facility. I'd say, again, COVID is when everyone switched over. When I started doing it in 19, I was the first one in each market doing it. Now it's catching on. Still not as many people, but yeah, in 19, it was a new concept. Again, even me getting into self-storage, I didn't understand it. I had to go to the guy's house, Mike's house, for 4 hours. Like, dude, I still don't understand this. How are you running this with no one on site?
I actually love hearing you say this, John. So I have one of my mobile home parks right next to it is a 1 acre lot. I own the 1 acre lot. It's flat. It's perfect for self-storage. There's only one other self-storage facility in the town. It's a smaller town, but it's a suburb of a bigger town. And I thought about building self-storage. And I have a friend who has some self-storage, and he's like, man, the key is you have to have someone that you trust on site there. And my thought was like, do I actually? I don't know if I do. So I love hearing you say that because I think this property is perfectly situated for self-storage. And I love the idea of a gate and it being pretty self-sustainable.
Yep. Well, you think about it, what really goes on in a storage facility? People are storing stuff. People come and go to get their stuff. Maybe it's even a vehicle they have parked. Other than that, even if you've got, and I've had the first month of owning my first facility, and we can get in that story if you want, but I had anything and everything that you could happen at a site. I had drugs, I had break-ins, I had people living on site. So all those things could
ship like a mobile home park.
Yeah.
We do that every day, man.
Right. It's the same thing. Probably same customers. But yeah, I mean, a gate and cameras take care of that because I can lock them out from my software. So if I see them in the facility or we get word that they're, living in the unit, we send them a text, call them, let them know they can't stay there. If they stay there, we kind of wait till they leave. Once they leave, we lock the gate with their keypad code. We lock their code out. They can't get in. What more can you do?
That sounds like the easiest eviction in the world, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm being sarcastic.
Don't tell anybody, but storage is still kind of the Wild West in terms of legalities and evicting tenants. There is a process, but I still know a lot of storage owners that they don't follow the eviction process. They just throw people's junk away, and it's obviously illegal, but there's no police commit.
So, John, we won't tell anybody. We're just going to broadcast it on our podcast, okay? If you don't mind. Actually, it's like my mom and Gabe's cousin, so you're going to be fine. So, curious, what size just for my curiosity, like what size are you targeting? What size do you own today?
Yeah, so my smallest is 6,000 square feet. Now it is 8,000 now because I've added, they're called relocatable units, but they look just like storage units. They're just not cemented to the ground. That was my smallest, and the only reason I bought that was because I already had another one in town. So I kind of expanded without building. And then my biggest is probably 5 or 6 acres and probably 40,000 square feet, which is still relatively small for self-storage.
When you, just for like my edification, like 10,000 square foot, what is that for units? How many units is that?
It's about 100 units, give or take.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So 100 square feet a unit-ish.
Yep. Yeah. On average, that's about, you can kind of figure that.
You have 14 facilities?
Yep.
So how many total units is that between the 14 facilities?
I think it's approaching 3,000 units, something 3, like that.
What a wonderful vanity metric, right?
Yeah, I know. We haven't talked about that.
3,000 units. I like that.
Yeah, I can't say the 1,000 thing yet, So I'm gonna have to get into self-storage and figure that out.
We talked about what's really important is the cash flow, right? That no one talks about. People just talk about, I've got 100,000 or 100 million in assets. They don't talk their cash flow. So really, those numbers, the units, the square feet, whatever, those metrics don't matter. It's the cash flow that you're making.
So I know we've talked about.
I agree. Well, I think even with 0 to 100, we put the number right on the book. It's right on the tribe. But conceptually, it's like if we can get people to understand how to buy 100 units, whatever that is, we can get them to buy as much as they want and create a lot of cash flow. So, but yeah, it's a vanity thing. It doesn't matter. There's people with 5 units who have more cash flow than 100 units. And
I've got a buddy that's got, what do you tell me, like 70 some paid off single family rentals. And he thinks he's playing catch up with everybody else. I'm like, no. You are not playing catch up, dude.
No, you're doing fine, sir. Yeah, that's so true. So you talked about lettering in the beginning. Are you still lettering, or how are you finding these deals? And then the second question there would be, are you still looking sort of like tertiary markets, like a little bit outside the main, the center of a city, say? I'm just curious, like what your strategy is there.
Yeah, so I have picked up a site, and it's all outdoor parking, and I'm in Columbus, Ohio, bigger city. I did pick up one site there. Otherwise, everything else is, more tertiary or secondary, but most of them have been from mailers. I bought some that were, I guess, pocket listings off the MLS. Yeah, it's just really staying in touch with the current owners. I've got about 40 sites that I follow up 3 or 4 times a year. And I am trying to hit new markets, but I'm doing my best to kind of stay in Ohio, or at least somewhat close. I've just found it to be easier to manage everything. Because back to, Mitchell, what you said, operations is super important. So for me, I want to stay in my area, and that's what I've done. And that's kind of my short-term plan.
Jon, have you financed all your facilities with SBA money?
No, 2 of them, but both those were refied. Then I've got 2 right now that are SBA. SBA can be good. And when I got in, I was getting, I don't even remember, 3.5%, which is awesome. And you're probably closer to 9 or even more at this point. I did one about a year and a half ago, just because what's cool about SBA is if you've got a site in town, you can get another deal in the same town and possibly come 0 money out of pocket, because it's considered an expansion.
Do I like that? You're speaking my language. No money down real estate.
Right. Yeah. So I've done that, but I've done a few deals, seller financing, life insurance companies, conventional, commercial. Yeah, I've got pretty much everything across the board.
So whatever financing makes sense to the asset. I'm curious. You mentioned a refinance, so I'm sure our listeners would be curious. So you purchase with an SBA loan, so a business loan essentially, and then you refi out with conventional, I guess, commercial real estate type loan. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So I'll start with the SBA loan, which again with self-storage you can do because it's partly business. And then I think it was 2 years later, it was my first 2 deals. I got in 15% down, I believe, for each of those. And then a couple years later, I had quite a bit of equity across the 5 deals that I had, and pulled out some money and got into long-term semi-non-recourse debt, and bought a house.
Phenomenal. Tax-free, pulled out the money tax-free.
Right.
I love that. So, you talk about, you ask the questions if deals are harder. I'm curious from your perspective, do you see the game that you play getting harder by the day, by the month, by the year? And with that, are you also looking at other asset classes or other areas? Or what's your kind of pulse on the game?
Good question. Because I see a lot of people pivoting, or so they call it pivoting. I see a lot of people who are crushing it, what they're doing, and they've been in it for a while, 5, 10 years, 15 years, whatever it is. And then they're like, you know what? I see a shiny object over here. It might be easier over here. I've been doing my best not to do that, and just stay in storage and just get deep into it, as opposed to, being thin across the board and bunch of different asset classes. For me, I'd rather go deep into one. It has definitely gotten harder, but if you look at storage as an asset class, it kind of grew up just after COVID in a lot of ways. And before that, and I've heard this analogy, before that, it was kind of in like it's, coming up to its teenage years. About 22, 20, 23, it kind of just grew up, and now it's like any other asset class. Harder to find deals that make sense. It's just become harder, which, that happens, but can still find deals. I've been getting creative with some seller finance deals, they're still out there. You just got to hunt for them. And the longer you're in something, and this is, I want to hit on this too. I've been in since, we'll call it 2013 to make myself feel better, an extra year there. You're going to have market cycles, right? And the longer you're in something, the better chance you might get lucky. So I was in real estate for 6-7 years before I found storage. I thought I missed the boat in 2018. And then COVID hit. And then values doubled or tripled in self-storage just because of COVID and the demand with COVID. So I was fortunate to kind of be along for that gold rush, but I'd also been in real estate investing and hadn't done really much. So the more you're in it, the more opportunity you're going to find, more luck you're going to find.
John, I'm curious about the tenant base or the people that are using the storage facilities. Like it's funny because I remember years ago, I'm a little bit of a minimalist in that, like, I like to acquire assets, cash flow in real estate, but I don't really love things. I love experiences. And so I remember, like, when I first heard about self-storage, I'm like, that's crazy. People rent these boxes to store shit. Like, I'm like, there's no way this is a dying industry, because I used to have this problem of, like, if I believe something, everyone else must also believe that, which I find is not accurate. But I'm curious, it's like self-storage is not going anywhere. Are most of the people, are they transitioning between homes? Are they literally just storing, they're moving, they're storing stuff because they just have stuff that they don't want to give away, and they're not donating to Goodwill? Like, who is the tenant base that typically renting self-storage units?
Yeah. And that's a good question. Listen, there are times where I start freaking out because I'm like, I've had one storage unit for 1 month throughout my entire life, and that was because I was moving when I was younger from apartments, I believe, and I needed some extra space for a month. But yeah, it freaks me out sometimes because I'm like, there can't be that many people out there that are hoarders, right? And that is the demographic. There are hoarders without a doubt. We're also becoming more of a rental nation, so people have less space. Will that change? I don't know, because I know we are buying more crap just in general as a society. So that's part of it. They're definitely, the people that are holding on to their kids' second grade tests and pictures that they colored. For the most part, a lot of our renters that we found they're just holding on to memories or junk or things that they think are somewhat valuable. It's usually $100 or less value in those units. So yeah, as far as demographic, it's interesting because self-storage does really well in great times and in bad times. So you need movement. So part of that demographic is also movement. Right now, at least where I'm at, there's minimal movement. So we're kind of down in occupancy right now. For the past, I'd say 4 or 5 months, we've really taken a dip. And I've heard that kind of nationwide. People just aren't moving. People aren't getting fired. People aren't getting promoted. Just kind of stagnant. People aren't buying extra crap right now. So for storage, we kind of need something to happen to kind of have an uptick. But yeah, right now it is steady. Storage is a steady asset.
So I've got a question. We talked about we said this a couple times. You talked about kicking yourself for not buying everything in 2015 or earlier, and how we can't predict the market. But like, we have conversations. I was talking to Travis like last week, and I'm like, are we going to be kicking ourselves in 10 years for not buying almost everything? Not dumb deals, not way over leveraged, but like trying to put together deals maybe a little bit more aggressively. And I'm not pitching this as like, we should go do this. I do get curious, even the mobile home park space, like in 10 years, are the pad rents going to be double? And I've been looking at these things going, man, I got to get this return today and this and this. And I'm very strict on that. And I think that's been good. But sometimes I wonder, and I'm curious both your perspectives, am I going to get 10 years later and go, dude, Mitch, like, you could have put that thing together a little bit skinnier, a little bit, not dangerous, but like, and it would be double. I mean, are we facing that? Or do you guys feel like the COVID era was a one-time huge money inflection that was unique? Or is the train on the tracks, we're going to do this thing again? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think there's a few things there. One, I think single-family rentals, if I had systems in place, I would eat them up. I'd buy them all. Because I think 10-year cycles, without a doubt, I don't know if they'll double. They could. They have, right, in history. But yeah, I think they'll always be safe, and especially in safe markets. Yeah, everything else, I think about that a lot. Like, could I get in a skinnier deal just because more than likely in 10 years, if I can hang on to it, it should be worth more? Possibly, but I think it goes back to kind of how I started in rental real estate. I started with 4 single family rentals, right? And they were at least cash flowing for the time. But after that time frame, I was able to acquire equity in those deals, right? So I had a good base to put equity into my commercial deals. So I have equity that I've put into the deals with my own money. And then I've also got a forced appreciation that I've got equity in these deals as well. So I kind of have a strong base to where I think, yeah, if I want to pick up 1 or 2 skinnier deals and kind of roll the dice, it may be smart. But to not have a good foundation and kind of speculate, I think that's dangerous.
100%. And I don't want that question to say, hey, go pick up skinnier deals and go speculate. I think just like globally, I do wonder sometimes if I'll look back and go, wow, everything doubled, everything, and maybe it won't, but it has in the last 10 years or more.
Absolutely. Like, I don't think we should ever bank on appreciation, but I love that Jon says, as long as you have a strong base. And I've actually had this conversation with more investors recently than I ever have. I've never had the conversation before. So, I have a close friend who is an investor. He's also in the mobile home park space. He's in contract on a smaller mobile home park here in Oregon. It's, closer to what an A-class park would be. It's a small park. He has some exchange money. It's a low cap rate, but he's like, this is a strong asset. Like, this is something I can hold on to for a long time. There are paved roads, there's sidewalks, there's streetlights. And he's like, it's a skinnier deal, but I have the money and I want to put it into something safe. And so the conversation we were having, he was asking the same exact thing you're asking, Mitch. Does it make sense to buy some of these lower cap, specifically for him was the mobile home park space, partner up with some other investors, a group of people that already have that strong base like Jon's talking about, and buy these lower cap properties that over time, the pad rents are going to go up and the value is going to be there. And specifically to whether it's storage or mobile home park, it's an affordability play as well. And looking back 10 years, 15 years, 20 years and going, wow, I'm glad I bought this. It was a safe asset. The return may not have been as, at the time I bought it, but I don't need that return anymore. This is, I think, a strategy maybe for a more seasoned investor, not someone starting out trying to replace their income with cash flow.
The type of asset class is super important. So single family rentals, right? We're undersupplied with rentals, especially single family houses. I know in our area, they hit the market, they're gone the next day. Mobile home parks, they're not making anymore, right? Apartments, they're making them, but we're still underserved with living. Self-storage is a different asset class. It's probably more similar to car washes. I mean, I'm around all my towns where I live at now, there's car washes everywhere and they just keep building them, which is saturating the market. That's happening in the storage too. So for me, especially in these smaller towns, 10,000 people, all it takes is one idiot to build a decent size facility in that town in the next 5 years, and it would drastically hurt my business. So I think it depends on the asset class without a doubt.
So are you thinking about that, Jon? The threats to your own portfolio? You said it's pretty easy to put up a storage facility that could really hurt the demand, the supply, picture. Like, are you looking at that, or are you thinking about again, I'm not saying to go pivot, but I'm sure that's in the back of your mind. Hey, I got a lot of equity. Are you thinking about next moves, or is that look, you don't think that's gonna happen?
Yeah, constantly. But I also think there's some of the markets I'm in, there's a better chance of that happening than others. The markets where I don't think that happens as much are my stronger markets and probably my smaller markets. I'm not going to have a REIT for the most part come into these smaller markets and build there. It doesn't make sense for them. So if Joe Bob and his cousin wants to put up, a couple buildings, will it impact my business? Maybe a little bit, but my competitors right now are Joe Bob and his cousin. And those are the guys that I'm outperforming because my operations is a lot better. So I'm definitely keeping my pulse on the markets. I do have one market where a couple sites are being built right now. Actually, they may be open as of today. And it'll affect things. But we're also on a down market right now in terms of occupancy. So yeah, I'm keeping my pulse on the market, but yeah, you just never know.
John, have you done any new construction? I know you added some square footage to one of your properties, but have you ever done a full new build?
Not yet. The site that I've got, that's all outdoor parking here in Columbus. I should have it really any day. Kind of a feasibility study to see if I can build, how much I can build, if it makes sense. So I have not built yet, but that is something that I'd like to do on that site, especially just because the location.
Yeah, would it be like those ones you brought into your other place where they're not attached to the ground?
So ideally, it is more, it's better value if you build. The relocatable ones, they really don't want anybody buying or financing them. They don't want anything that's over 50% that are relocatable. So ideally, I'd rather build everything. And then the relocatables are more for like property lines. If you can't build on the property line, fill it with these relocatable units. But if I find out I can't build on this property, I will without a doubt kind of put all my parking on one side of the facility and then put in some relocatable units. It's a lot quicker to expand. It's a lot cheaper. It's a lot easier, a lot faster, everything. So I'm okay with doing either one.
So did you say are you buying relocatable? Are you leasing those or
buying? Yep. Buying them. Yep.
What's the company? Just curious what.
I use Boxwell or have used Boxwell, Boxwell. They, and even Gabe, the site that you've got, if you've got, if you can put up a fence and gate and, put some stone down, you could put up some of those Boxwells and see how it rents out.
I think I should do that like yesterday.
Well, we have 10 acres on the side of a mobile home park in a small area in Wisconsin. And like the storage thing, I keep thinking about it, but I also don't want to like put a huge CapEx investment into this without I love to test the market first. So this could be a good, hey, let's put 3 or 4 units. They fill up. Great. And then maybe we build something out. Anyway, that's great.
Yeah. Well, there's advantages and disadvantages, but I do it again. I'm doing it more on like on the property lines, places where I can't build. But they're like equipment. So they're also a tax advantage. So I've been buying at least a round every year just for that reason. I actually get 100% financing on them as well. And usually within 6 to 12 months, I'm cash flowing positive. So the returns are obviously great because I'm not putting any money into them.
And they're, 100% finance. Is that directly through the company?
It is not. They may have that option, but they've got partners that they partner with and can do that.
Here's if I wonder if the city, say you couldn't get a permit or a special use permit or conditional use, I guess, for a property to do storage units. Do they look at Boxwell differently? Because you said it's equipment. You're not building anything. It's not affixed to the land, it's sitting on cinders. Like, I wonder if that's sort of a workaround potentially because we have a lot of mobile home parks where there's a ton of room to, anyway, curious to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Say the PC version of this, because there are some municipalities I have not gone to and said, hey, I'm putting Boxwell to it.
I got you. Yeah.
Relocatable units in. But for the most part, municipalities don't understand them. So Boxwell does have a sheet or a website link to send them to kind of explain it. And usually, for the most part, what I've seen is you just have to get a shed permit because they're basically like a shed. And there's actually areas underneath them for forklifts. So worst case scenario, you put them down without authorization and the city comes and says, what are these? What are you doing? You can't have these. You can say, well, I've got a forklift coming tomorrow, pick them up, move them somewhere else. Not that you're going to do that, but it's a gray area.
I think there's going to be a lot of these in my future. So John, I'm curious, and I'm sure our listeners too, like pricing, right? I don't think we haven't had a lot of self-storage investors on. How you determine pricing? Do you do anything with the dynamic pricing model? Like I know they do sometimes in short-term rentals, hotels, RV parks, but tell me, how do you go into a market? I know you intimately know the market you're in. Maybe you can go to a competitor, see what they're charging, but how do you come up with pricing?
For rental rates is what you're talking, right?
For the self-storage units, like
for the units, yeah. So it's dynamic pricing without a doubt. I'm looking at competitors. Day one going in, I'm looking at competitors. I'm seeing who's highest and I'm seeing who's lowest. And I kind of want to be that just above mid-tier. So day one, I'm more than likely increasing rates across the board for everybody. I try not to gouge them. It's usually a few dollars here and there. Since I'm in smaller towns, I don't want to be that new idiot owner that's trying to gouge everybody. But then over time with street rates, if I've got, we'll say 20 10 by 10 units, and I've only got 2 or 3 available, my rates are definitely going up and I'm pushing them as far as I can. If I've only got 1 available, they're going super high.
Yeah, well, I only know what dynamic pricing is because I have a campground, like an RV park campground. And we set up through CampSpot, a company that Mitch and Travis had told me about, and they use the dynamic pricing model. I think a lot of people don't realize they're on the opposite end of that when they're booking a flight, a hotel last minute, and there's only a couple spots left. You're going to pay a premium. But can you explain kind of how that works or how you have that set up in the self-storage business?
Yeah. So it's, I just changed software, so it's a little different, but the software I was just in, basically I can have it automatically adjust. So if I'm above 90% occupancy, I can increase the rental rate by whatever, $40. If I'm between 81% and 90% occupancy, I can lower the street rates. So I play with that. And then you can also, the REITs do this a lot. So if you guys ever rent a storage unit, especially from a REIT, so I don't want to name names, but the bigger boys that you've seen, you've heard of, they're getting you in for a cheap rate. Might be $1, might be free, because sometimes they are free or so they claim. And then month 2 or 3, your rent just triple. They're trying to cook you. They know that storage renters are long-term renters for the most part on average. So they're going to cook you over time and they're going to get everything they can out of you. If you move out, that's fine. They'll do the same thing next person and wheels keep spinning.
They're saying like, hey, free for the first month, but they're signing a contract. And after that first month, after they've moved all their stuff in, truckloads of stuff in these storage units, then all of a sudden they're maybe paying double what market rent is, but they don't want to move.
Yeah. Because it's month to month. So in the contract, I'm sure it says it in there. I bought my contract. I got an attorney drafted up. But yeah, you can change rents month to month. It's a month to month contract. And each time you make a payment, technically you're agreeing to that contract. So yeah, it's, I don't do that. I do raise rents usually about once a year, and I don't get everybody. I usually get the lowest tier people and give them a few bucks here and there to kind of offset my insurance increases. But other than that, I try not to gouge them just because I'm in these smaller towns, but I do try to get everything I can out of street rates.
Yeah, John, is month to month typical? Does anyone do longer? I mean, in the self-storage world, is that typical month to month?
Very typical. I would say it's all month to month. I feel like I've seen some start to do like week to week.
Oh, wow.
Which to me is, I don't know. There are some people, because we'll run specials like $1 for the first full month, and usually that will hit month 2, but they're still probably getting in at a cheap rate and people will just drop off trash, right? So now we have to go through the auction process, try to auction it off. If not, now we've got labor that we've got to pay to get rid of it. So yeah, everything is month to month.
Tell us about the auction process, because I think there's shows that make this look really cool where people, they buy the storage unit for $100 and there's millions of dollars worth of treasure in there.
I love those shows. They're just total bullshit, but it's so fun. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not real. Now, well, you think about this. So those units are being auctioned off, someone stopped paying. Now, there are chances where that person could have, passed away or whatever reason, and maybe there are some valuables in there. That happens, but it's very, very, very rare. For the most part, it's people that can't pay their $50, $75 a month. In Ohio, every state has their own lien laws. In Ohio, it's 6 days after past due, they're locked out of the gate. 10 days, they get a late fee. 30 days, we technically start the eviction process. And then I think 60 days, we can auction it off. And we just do that online. Our helper goes and cuts the lock, takes a video of everything inside, and then uploads it online. And it's all done online, auction online. And yeah, it's pretty simple.
And then that person that wins the auction has to come there and take everything out.
They're supposed to. They don't always, and they do put a deposit down, and that helps us if, put a deposit down. If they don't clean it out, at least we get some money. So now we can pay for someone to come get all the trash. But yeah, for the most part, the best things I've seen are, I've seen an old Jaguar car, like a 1980s. We didn't auction off. I did a lot of research and found who the owner was, so we fortunately found him. Otherwise, it's like tools, which can be valuable. Baseball, basketball, football cards, you'll see that every once in a while. Otherwise, it's junk. It's like tires, papers, report cards from 30 years ago. Just stuff people are just hanging on to.
So, John, I want to pivot just a little bit because we talk to really, successful entrepreneurs every week. But I never want to get in the mindset. What I'm trying to say is I always want to remember how unique every investor is in your own journey. And the fact is you're unique in the marketplace. The amount of people that scale over 5 units is very, very small. And so I'm curious to go back into your journey. What advice would you give a new investor specifically around scale? And maybe that's a little bit of mindset, a little bit of action, but what would you tell somebody? Because there's not a lot of you out there that have scaled as fast as you have and had the success that you have.
Yeah, well, I think it started with a good base, right? So when I was really able to scale, I kind of went all in. So I sold my 4 single family rentals. We cashed out my wife and mine 401ks. We had a HELOC we used. We had some savings. So more or less, I built up some money, some reserves in different forms. And then once I saw that, this works, now I was able to go all in. As I was building, I was still trying to build, but now that I found something that really worked, I was able to go all in and put equity into these deals, which I think helped. And then force appreciation. I think you have to force appreciation at some point. And I was able to do that to gain more equity in deals that I can cash out, refi, and take some of that equity and go buy more deals. So you've got to kind of always have the wheel spinning and look at what opportunities are out there.
John, to piggyback on Mitch's question, you've been able to achieve something that a lot of people don't achieve, and not just financial freedom, but even in your bio, you mentioned you get to spend a lot of time with your wife and kids. And I love that that's in your bio, because an important pillar for 0 to 100 really is the time freedom piece, not just the financial freedom, but the time freedom. And so I'm curious, early on, was that your North Star? Not just hey, I want to be financially free because I want to be wealthy and show people how fucking rich I am, but I want to spend time with my wife and kids. Was that important to you from day one? Is that what your why? Was that your strong why of why you wanted to be financially free?
That was definitely, an interesting, I had a buddy on my podcast about a year ago, and we started talking about this, and he's like, it's funny. Most real estate investors, when you say most, probably over 95%, are getting into real estate investing for time freedom, right? And then at some point we kind of lose our way because we hear everyone beating on their chest, I've got 3,000 units or I've got $100 million worth of real estate. We kind of lose our way and kind of, not necessarily lose our time freedom, but kind of jeopardize it or sometimes get in positions where we may jeopardize it. So yeah, going back to your question, that was definitely one of them. That and wanting to get out of my 9 to 5. Because I did not like it. I did not have a future there. Those two things were definitely my fuel to get me where I wanted to go. But yeah, I've always thought, why would I wait till I'm 65, 70 to live my life? Why am I contributing to a 401k that I can't touch for 40 or 50 years? That made no sense to me. Even though I did it for a few years, it made no sense. I'm like, why am I doing this? This makes no sense. I'm getting at best 8% return. And with inflation, that's wiped out. So yeah, time freedom without a doubt. I've always I don't know if I've had a problem with authority, but I've always questioned authority. So I like to live time on my own. I like to control my time and, I want to be in control of that.
The fact that you said, I don't know if I had a problem with authority tells me the answer.
I'll do it.
I say the same thing. I think when it comes to retirement and 401k and all those things, I think simply like the rules have changed or the game has changed. And so what worked for my parents or your parents or the generation before that doesn't work for us anymore. We don't get the same thing. And you can go, my parents, for example, have an amazing pension through the railroad. Well, that's not available for my generation, right? So we have to think differently. We have to attack it differently. And so anyway, it's awesome that you realize that a little earlier.
No, yeah, that's a good point. Well, there's a lot of people where 401ks will work, but I think you still have to be active in learning and knowing where to put your money in the correct assets, where I don't think people are just blindly, and I was one of them, people are just blindly contributing to 401k. You don't even know what you're contributing to, right? So I think just in general, as a society in general, we're just not educated in that space.
Yeah, I think clarity is always a big piece too. You seem like someone that was very clear on what you wanted your life to look like, and you knew what you didn't want in your life, and then you created that for yourself through cash flow real estate. I mean, I think you're just a great example of, knowing what you want, getting clear, and then actually making it happen. So kudos to you.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, and I think it took me a while to find someone like a real life person. It wasn't just someone on Bigger Pockets or another podcast. It took me a while to find a person that was near me that I met for lunch one time, and he ended up leaving his job probably, I don't know, I want to say a year after we had met. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is possible. Like, this can actually happen. So I think some of that I needed, and it couldn't just be someone that was on a podcast that I'll never meet. But yeah, I think, knowing where you're going and also seeing someone do it, I think is helpful too.
So does that mean you're going to be that guy for any of our listeners that reach out to you directly and want to have lunch?
Without a doubt. Absolutely.
Awesome. So we have a final question that we ask all of our guests. Maybe you've heard it, because I can only assume that you've listened to every single one of our podcasts.
I'm listening right now, actually.
That's amazing. You're listening to...
I bet you are.
Multitask. I love it. Mitch, why don't you take us out with the final question?
I'll take it. So, John, it's a hypothetical. You're on your buddy's couch. By the way, your buddy's not smart.
My buddy's not smart.
Yeah, we've had to put this in there because everyone's like, well, I'm going to use my buddy and borrow money. He's also broke. He's not smart. He's not a good resource. So you're on your buddy's couch. You're broke. You have no money, right? You've lost all of your connections, but you haven't lost your experience. No network, no money, little roof over your head, but nothing. The question is, how do you get started to go build a real estate portfolio, something that's impactful? Like, what does that first month or week look like?
Real estate portfolio. Can I change it a little bit and say I want to buy a small business instead?
Let's go.
So for me, I would go after a small business, and I would find probably a service business that can scale and hopefully get maybe 100% seller financed or 100% financed. So maybe the seller finance my down payment, other part is a bank loan, and then I'm working in that business for a couple of years, and then I'm scaling and then taking that cash to invest in real estate. More than likely, that's what I would do. You can still get started in real estate investing, but I think I could be wrong, but I think in areas it will take a little bit longer, to where if you've got a business that you're running, you can stash, money away and then put that into one of your deals. I think in the longer term, it'll be stronger, and I think you can go further faster at some point.
I love that answer. And I think that my answer would be almost 99% the same today. It's actually changed over time. I really have focused 100% in real estate. I've done well in real estate, but the business component offers a completely different metric of cash flow and scale. And pairing the two together, I think, is very powerful. So that's amazing. That's an amazing answer.
John, this has been an awesome episode. So many nuggets. I mean, I'm excited to go back and listen to this episode when released.
Appreciate you, John.
Appreciate you guys doing this podcast.